Hello, everyone, and welcome to the August 12th edition of the Gateway API Community Meeting. This meeting, as always, is governed by the Kubernetes Code of Conduct, effectively boiling down to be nice to one another. So please do be nice to one another. We use Zoom, so when you have a question or an interjection, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom, as that helps us to keep the meeting flowing. And it is an open agenda. The meeting doc that's linked to the calendar invite, you can add anything you want to the agenda. If we can get to it today, we will. If we can't, we can always park it for a future meeting. We do have a bit of an agenda for today, so I kind of imagine anything that gets added at this point probably ends up on the next meeting, but we'll see. I think I might see some new faces. So if we'll give a couple seconds. If anybody wants to introduce themselves and say like hi, who they are, maybe like what they're doing with Gateway API, we'd love to hear from you before we get started on the agenda today. We'll give a couple seconds for that.
Hey, I'm Vikas. I'm working with Google, and recently we picked on the Gateway API stuff. So I'm kind of just scratching the surface here. I understand how things works here.
Very cool. Welcome.
Hey, I'm
Hey,
Abhishek. I see another Abhishek here. I'm a maintainer of Apache API 6 API gateway, and since network stuff is my core interest, so I figured that there is this thing called Gateway API happening in Kubernetes space. So I just wondered what it is about, and then thinking of joining and then maybe contributing a little. Yep.
Wonderful. Welcome. Glad to have you both here.
Yeah, hi, this is Abhishek, and I have recently started working on Gateway APIs, and so looking forward to work with you on the OSS part as well. And currently, we are working on Auth part. Yeah.
Roger that. Welcome.
Hi everyone, my name is Taryn. I'm just new to contributing to open source. I just picked up conformance test. I'm just looking to start contributing to open source with the Gateway API.
Cool. Are you working on any particular implementation of the Gateway API?
I just picked up a test for the gRPC route mirroring.
Gotcha.
So I'm just working on that. I just picked it up over the weekend.
Cool. Yeah, one of the things that's kind of hard about getting started with Gateway API is it's an API specification. So it's like you can think of it more like it's a standard first. So like we often find that people that join in have a little trouble like finding their legs. So first, for all of you who are new, and glad to have so many new people, I'm sure you've seen it, but if you haven't, we do have a Slack channel on Kubernetes Slack, Gateway API, SIG Network Gateway API. It's linked in the main repository, I think, in the README. So please do feel free to join us there, ask questions. There are no bad questions. Love to hear from you. Love to be able to help. And then second, if you are in like not working on an implementation, we have an implementations page on our website, which is also linked from the repository. And it's kind of hard to get started if you don't have an implementation. So we usually recommend like go find the implementation on that page that kind of like suits you or like, you gravitate towards, because seeing how they implement the Gateway API will help with you like ramping up and kind of like getting into specific things like, for instance, gRPC route and stuff like that. But yeah, very awesome. Thanks to everybody who introduced himself today. Does anybody else want to go, or should we get started on the agenda?
I'll just say hello. My name's Renee. I've been helping a colleague with implementing Gateway API UI stuff in a Kubernetes app called Headlamp. Nice to meet you all.
Very cool. Nice to meet you too. All right. I think we'll get started then if nobody else. I think I'm sharing my screen. Yeah. All right. So getting started, we have a couple. I don't know if the people are here for these. We have a couple things on the agenda I put before we go into release stuff. So one was pod selector for mesh APIs. Is the person for this here Aryan?
I don't think he's on this call. We talked about it some at the last meeting, and maybe it just didn't get moved from next.
No, it was parked. It was parked at next,
Oh,
but
okay.
I think he hasn't shown up since then. So let's
Okay,
just park
should
it at
we
next until it shows
Park
up.
it again. All right. Park that one. The next one was somebody with just Isaac as the name. Provide guidance. So I think this is your issue, Rob. Provide guidance on how implementations to support Kubernetes traffic distribution. Is Isaac on here?
I don't see anyone named Isaac in the list. No, July 7th. So this is something that maybe was discussed when I wasn't around. I'm not sure.
Juki is
Oh.
Isaac. So I think it's just that they are
Yeah.
unavailable today. They're not on the meeting. So that's another one maybe we just park.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, then I think most of the conversation will be about the release. I think we're going to have quite a bit to say. We'll have to kind of time constrain ourselves a little bit because I think any one of these can get really deep. Does anybody have anything that, like a topic that's really quick, like just like more of like a shout out? Now might be a good time. Otherwise, we'll get started on talking about release 1.4. Going once, going twice. Sold. Okay, release 1.4. 2 weeks remain until code freeze. So if we look at the discussion here, the announcement I posted a little bit ago, we're saying code freeze is on the 26th. We'll be doing review, release candidates on the 29th. So within a few days here, we'll start doing SIG network review and then starting on our release candidates, maybe as soon as the 29th. Soaking, testing, getting conformance reports, that kind of thing, and then the final release on the 20th. So I did reach out to all 8 of these, the 4 that are moving to standard. Well, technically, I think it's 5 that are moving to standard. This one probably needs to be moved because it's a little, is it this one? Yeah, it's this one. It's a little bit on a different track than the rest. But all 8 of them have received some kind of update. For the most part, just trying to double check with the people who are moving them forward, like where they think they are at, since we only have a couple weeks left, and saying we probably need to start getting PRs kind of, if there are PRs to make, they probably need to start getting in within the next few days, because that'll give us a week or so to get through the PR review process, etc. We don't necessarily need to go through each and every one of these I listed, but I did list them in case there's something to be said. I have one specific thing I want to call out on backend TLS policy.
I'm curious if it's the same thing I was going to call out on backend TLS policy.
Okay, so let's start with just talking about backend TLS policy. So I did put a call out on backend TLS policy today that I think, is this right? Yeah, we have these 2 subtasks that need to be completed, and this one just popped up. And I'm not actually, after trying to review everything that's going on with backend TLS policy today, I'm not actually sure we've captured everything or not. So I did kind of message Candace on here on the issue and say, like, hey, is there anything that's not captured here that we need to do? But I know this one in particular, we need to. Oh, okay, yeah. So this was the one I wanted to raise, was we need tests for these 2 things, and subject alternative names, I think we said, is both going straight to standard and will be core, but there's no conformance test for that. And then the backend TLS core and experimental without a test. So I think at least this one's probably the higher priority, but I marked it as critical. Like, we need these tests before code freeze.
I was about to say, I thought Katarzyna was taking a look at that, and she just raised her hand.
Yeah, I raised my hand because I'm working on testing that. I'm thinking with Norway. Yeah, and I hope I will manage to. I mean, it's subject alt names, of course. I will manage to this.
That is awesome. Thank you very much. Are you okay if I just assign you to it for now, and put it in progress?
Yes,
when
sure.
you're not going to do
Yes,
both of
yes.
them, that's fine. We can just do one at a time.
Yes, sure. I already created some web pull requests, but I need to work on it more.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. And you're specifically wanting to do this one, right?
Yes, yes. I want to do this one.
Okay. Okay. All right. I think that's a good start. And then this one's experimental. We'll look for somebody who can do the backend TLS one.
But for experimental, we need conformance tests.
Yeah, we need. It's ideal. Yes. Ultimately, yes. Ultimately, if we're going to say something is experimental, we should have some kind of conformance tests that kind of allow somebody who's adopting it and like trying to experiment with it to kind of validate that things are working.
I see.
But I don't think we've ever said that it absolutely must. So I say should very, very explicitly, like should. I think we can get away with it if we don't have tests for that one. But I don't think we can get away with not having subject alt names is core and standard. That one will absolutely need a test.
Yeah,
So
I don't think. I think most new experimental features don't end up with conformance tests. They're hard to write without an implementation. You get kind of in a chicken and egg situation there. But +1, I agree that anything trying to go to GA needs good conformance test coverage with multiple implementations.
I would actually go so far as to say that if we don't have conformance for subject alt names, I think it should revert to extended.
Yeah.
Well, extended or experimental?
Even.
I would say experimental.
Yeah, extended and experimental. So yeah, we'll thank you, Katarzyna. Really appreciate that. So that was one of the bigger ones I wanted to look at. Does anybody else? So I don't see Candace here. Candace had a topic for today that related, so I put that in there. Snorwin's here, right?
Yeah, I wanted to bring that up again. So there is some larger discussions going on how we should define invalid backend TLS policies, and if we even should introduce at this late stage a new status condition. And as the discussion now moves, I think we are only able to fulfill all these requirements we want, or all the semantics, how we want to describe invalid backend TLS policies or TLS policies without having certificates, all the CI certificates resolved. So without adding an additional condition,
Be able to figure something out.
Almost impossible. So we try to came to a conclusion, but I think we're still circling out, even on the feasibility, if it's even possible at this late stage to introduce a new status condition. But I think as I discovered, the current implementations implementing backend TLS policy all have a slightly different opinion on when a backend TLS policy is considered invalid, also how then to the user or to the end user that is signaled. So I think it's really important to clearly define and standardize the behavior of invalid or partially invalid backend TLS policies.
Can you summarize what the options were real quick and tell us
which
one you're leaning towards?
Just reuse the existing status condition, so the accepted condition, and set it invalid if all or any of the CI certificate refs cannot be resolved. And that was a bit too harsh. We could not agree if it should be any or all. And then we thought, yeah, let's do it with an additional condition, with the resolve refs condition, if just some CI certificates refs are not resolvable. But there are some which are, so we can still accept the backend TLS policy if only one, for example, only one CI certificate ref cannot be resolved. And that's why we ended up with having this additional condition instead of being more strict on the accepted condition.
Yeah. I remember the conversation now. You reminded me. I remember thinking at the time, I know that there's not a whole lot of love for this, but I remember thinking at the time that because we're getting so close to standard, because we're kind of in a crunch time, it's usually better to go with the fail fast option because you can back off of that. But the alternative where you Like, will we ever end up in a state where we might want to be able to express, I don't want this to be valid unless all the certificates are there. And if we do, just make sure that we're lining ourselves up to get there, to have that be a possibility. I think we're okay if in either case, but go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, this is a really unintuitive one because it feels like it's an upside down world, right? Because the absence of a certificate, like if you have a reference to a CA cert that actually is invalid for some reason, every CA cert you add is effectively loosening validation. So it feels backwards compared to the alternative, like most other parts of our API, where if you were missing configuration, you might be actually missing validation. I don't know how to describe it.
If you have a reference to a CA cert that is not valid, then clients that try to use that cert will be rejected, right?
Right. So it's, what I'm saying is
missing.
You are, but what I'm saying is you are, if you still accept the CA certs that are valid, you're still failing fast, but in as limited a way as you possibly could. Right? Like instead of failing fast for everything across the board, you're failing fast for the one thing that's invalid, which seems like a closer parallel to, fail fast in the smallest possible way you can, which feels like a good guideline here.
Is there any prior art for something like this?
Not that I'm aware of.
Not that I know of.
I can't think of anything.
Most of the prior art for wrangling CA certs is with bundles, and it's tricky to construct a bundle with a bad certificate without making the whole bundle bad. If you're talking about syntactic validity, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
What bugs me about this is that we're back into this world of, oh, we're so close to standard, we have to rush it. Or, we can decide it's not ready to be standard, which I realize would suck.
This was something that was on my mind, which I
yeah, if we don't
Spicy.
want to do that, I would lean towards taking the most conservative approach, which would be either they're all valid or we reject the whole thing, because it's easier to relax after the fact.
Yep, that was my point exactly. Like, it's easier to back off of that later.
I'm having a tough time here because Rob makes some really good points, but that's still kind of where I'm leaning there.
Yeah, I lean that way too because it's just it's conservative and simpler and safe. Is it great user experience? Right out the
definitely
gate?
not.
No, but we can grow into a better one from there. It's pretty easy to say, no. If anything's misconfigured, it's all misconfigured. And then iterate on that towards, okay, well, we have some conditions under which, like, okay, if you have, like, this one can be misconfigured, but we'll still accept the other ones. Like, that's easy to move towards, I think, after the fact. So I tend to agree. I tend to think that was the thing I brought up the last time too, is like, I know nobody loves it, but it's simple.
Why would we provide an experience that I think we're all agreeing is worse to users?
I'm not sure that I agree that it's worse.
Okay.
To users, I guess maybe I can be persuaded. Like, to a user, but
wait, who's the user?
Let me think about that. Yeah, let me think about who the user is.
Yeah.
Let
Rob,
me back up. I'm still not sure
whoever's
that I agree.
Whoever's configuring backend TLS policy, let's imagine they just added one more CA cert, and they made a typo in their reference to that cert. Do we want the whole thing to blow up, or do we want just something to show up in status? Hey, that last reference you added is invalid.
Ricardo, do you want to jump in here?
Yeah. So I agree with Rob. I think that, like, from a user perspective, if you add a CA that it's invalid, but it's not used to the communication to your backend, it doesn't matter, right? So you are not breaking the communication if you add some CA that, like, it's not used on the whole chain. Let's say you have this case of, like, a whole a CA with 15 certificates, but just 3 they are used to the backend. So it won't break. So why should we break if in the end it's not even used, right? I think it would be good to have some sort of warning, like, hey, user, you may be on this, on this invalid state.
Yeah, that's what Norwin is advocating for.
Yeah, but you are not breaking the communication. If we decide to break everything for a certificate that's not even used on the communication, like maybe the person just copied. You have companies that they have this huge chain of certificates, and they provide that for the users. But it's because you have like different intermediate CAs, and in the end, it's not maybe it's not even used. So I'm not sure if it's aggregating value to invalidate the whole communication.
There's also,
instead of just letting them know that you have some invalid something, you added something that it may be invalid, so maybe you have a problem here because of that.
Yeah, that's a good point. And Rob, you made a good point too. And there's also one thing that kind of occurred to me. We may have a situation with roles, right? Where the person who is providing certificates may not be the person who is also providing the backend TLS policy. So the person who's providing the certificates may be like, oh crap, I need to revoke my certificate. I will delete it. And that could, if the controller decides to implement that a certain way, like, oh, it's no longer there, but the reference is, that would blow everything up. And the person who so I think, yeah, I think I am persuaded actually.
Shane, I think that last bit persuaded me too.
Yeah, that's the scenario in my head. You don't want the person who's in charge of the search just saying, pop, there goes all your connections. So we would probably,
I mean, the person configuring the certs might like that, but probably not.
They might
the rest
think
of
it's
the people.
hilarious. Yes.
Yeah.
They may even do it.
All right, fine. I'm convinced.
Another reason not to allow it.
Oh, hey, Candace is here.
Hey, sorry, I'm coming in late, but I am very interested in what comes out of this conversation. I think my last comment on the gap was that it's too soon for us to get this into the standard. There hasn't been enough time for debate, discussion.
And yet we have to define it is the problem.
Why do we have to define it?
Because we don't want to, well, we should define it. I mean, I want to say we have to define it, but we definitely
define what?
We don't want the behavior. We don't want different implementations to choose different behaviors of this ultimately, right? Ultimately, we don't want that. So we have to eventually define it.
It was defined in the original GEP, and it said, basically it was that any connection that is attempted with an invalid cert must fail. But it didn't mention anything about about whether we need to mark the policy as invalid or not, or whether we need to block all connections if one cert is bad. So yeah. I think the discussion here is definitely around the status of the policy, and that the original GAP is okay going into standard.
Roger.
So my point would be that you're right. The original GEP provided some guidance here. I think that what I'm hoping for in API refinement phases in general, anything that we're trying to get GA is to be more specific, right? So there's less room for ambiguity, and there's more consistency across implementations. The GEP, as I understood it, prior to this, left a lot of room open to interpretation, and this is really, I think, trying to lock that down and be more specific with how we handle some edge cases. I think it's very, very useful to have that. We may not be able to get everything nailed down perfectly, but I would certainly like to try for issues like this if we can.
Norwin?
Yeah, for me, the diversity in the current interpretation and implementation shows really that there is too many gaps open. Even some implementations still connect to plain text, even if there is a backend TLS policy which has unresolved CA certificate. For me, there is too much differentiation or different behaviors between the different implementations, and that's also not clear for the user what's then the expected behavior. And also for me, when I was implementing it, for me it was not clear how it should be implemented. So I was checking all the different implementations in order to see some common patterns. And that's how I came up with the list in the end. So at the end, we had to choose some interpretation when we want to consider it invalid, when we want to block traffic, in which cases. But I think also for the implementations, I would rather prefer to add a new condition at this late point of time rather than have it so unclearly specified. And it's not, I think, at least from our implementation point of view, it's not a huge deal to add, even when the API is graduating a new condition to it.
Roger that. I'm definitely persuaded by the specific approach after talking it through a little bit, and I appreciate talking it through. As far as when to do it and how to do it, I hate to say this, but Flynn kind of brought it up and it's kind of been on my mind. And Candace, please don't hate me, but should we
That's right.
consider
Just
waiting a
blame
little
me
bit
for it.
longer? It's all Flynn's fault. Should we
Yeah.
consider waiting a little bit longer with backend TLS policy to shake things out? That's a question. It's not, I'm not trying to be like, that is exactly what I think we should do. I'm trying to say, question mark. Should we be waiting a little bit longer? Should we go to 1.5? What's the damage of that?
Did I hear Candace say that her last comment was exactly that?
Oh, did I miss it?
I may have misunderstood Candace.
I didn't say that I thought we should take a backend TLS policy out of a 1.4 deliverable. No.
Okay.
I said that if we're introducing something that's a little bit not properly fleshed out, that we shouldn't introduce that as we go to GA. But then Rob said that yes, anything that works a bit better should be a part of GA.
I think my point was, I probably didn't communicate it very clearly. My point was that anything that further clarifies the spec and leads to more consistent implementations is very useful to have before GA. Like Norwin's point of right now, we have a lot of variation in kind of implementation details of backend TLS policy, and that can get frustrating for users if they're, switching between implementation A and B at some point in the future.
And frustrating for implementations.
Yeah.
Which are second most important, but still.
Yeah.
And the implementation that you're talking about now includes the resolved refs or does not include the resolved refs solution?
No, at the moment, none of the implementations using the resolved refs condition, because it was not part of the API and of the GAP as it was proposed. So they try to mimic the semantics into the accepted conditions. That's what the current state is. So they have different interpretation when the accepted condition should be set to invalid, depending of either all or any CA certificate refs cannot be resolved. Some maybe check even expiry or the certificate content. I don't know that. So there are just different interpretations now of this accepted condition, because there was no other condition proposed in the API. And the idea is to have more clear idea what implementations can do and how they're supposed to set the condition once the accepted condition, but also for more specific CA certificate ref specific validations and checks than the resolved refs condition, as we have it on other resources like the gateway for the listener certs or the HTTP route. So the concept of resolved refs condition exists, but not for backend TLS policy.
Not for any policies, I think, right?
I think backend TLS policy is the only policy we have in, or alongside with the backend load balancer policy we have in the standard. Don't know how they handle it for implementation specific policies.
Robbie, go ahead. You had your hand up first.
Thanks. You know, as far as timeline for this gap, I think there, you know, folks have been working on this together. It's been awesome to see some really great improvements make it through. I think there's, you know, good and reasonable discussion about some parts of this not, you know, maybe being ready in time. But I would say let's just wait and see what this group is capable of. It's, you know, I don't want to prematurely pull something from scope. It seems like we're currently on track to have multiple, you know, to meet the graduation criteria for a large portion of the API. Maybe that means that some portion of it still needs to stay in experimental, but I would hate to, you know, delay the work, you know, that has already been done. There's been some awesome work done by Norwin, Candace, Katarzyna. I'm probably missing others. Want to give them a chance to get this through in 1.4.
Roger that. I raised my hand to say basically we probably need to be done for time, and to say something like that. Like, I think that conversation may need to come up. It's good to be thinking about these sort of things, but at least for now, we have a little bit more runway. Let's use it. I think that we, the maintainers, kind of owe a definitive answer on whether we feel like this has to be in for this thing to go to standard, this thing specifically. So I put it on my to-do list to get back to it. I appreciate the refresher in the conversation. We should provide basically like a definitive, like it needs to be in or not. In the meantime, let's just keep trying to move it forward, and we'll check back in next week. All right. So for anybody who is interested in this conversation, anybody who is implementing backend TLS policy, PR 3909 is one of the things that we're kind of debating. I don't know that there's any other things that are hanging. Oh, and there's the testing, but that's covered now. Thanks again, Katarzyna. So I think ideally we're in good shape there, but we'll double check if there's any other loose ends on that one. These ones, again, we don't necessarily need to go stop and talk deeply about each of these, but I put them on here. So does anybody, like, where are we? Actually, I think Leora's on here. Where are we at with supported features at a high level? Is there anything kind of lingering?
No, just you know, there's this gap PR to get a final stamp. I wanted Nick to put an eye on it, because Nick was one of the more involved people and the ideation and everything with supported feature. Most of the other things are kind of you know, go as expected. There are a few merged PRs already, and now that Flean kindly introduced the mesh resource as well, I'm trying to, obviously I don't think the API, unless I'm missing something, I don't think the actual API for mesh resource is there, but like according to the design and everything, it was approved. I'm working with Becca to also support the publish of support features on the mesh resource. But yeah, I think everything's on track. No big updates. Yeah.
For the record, I'm gonna try to do a PR for the mesh API next week. There's no way it's gonna happen this week.
Yeah, no problem. I think we're not really dependent on it, right? Assuming you just take the API more or less as you.
I'm literally going to copy and paste it pretty much.
Yeah. So yeah, I think and it's a small change in the conformance to just respect and read from a mesh resource, but yeah.
Who's you had your hand up?
Yeah, sorry. You may have already figured it out amongst yourselves, but who is actually doing that work? Once mesh gets in, who wires up supported features like that, the machinery in conformance to support the mesh resource.
So in fact, when you think about it, there's no really, so Flint's API already includes the supported feature status, which is
right.
good. And then the changes that's required are very minimal. It's just that the suit gonna read the mesh resource and just take the supported features from there, similarly as it is doing from Gateway Plus. So that's what Becca is gonna do it. I think he has something in flight already. But then most of the actual work is going to be for implementation to actually apply a mesh resource and publish supported features there, right? So,
So, but it seems like the request here is that the mesh resource is merged, say, a week before, or at least a few days before the code freeze timeline, to give time for Becca or whoever to add the supported features.
I think we can simplify this a little bit. Do not very much pressure Flynn or something to do something ahead of the deadline, but I think we can simplify. If we have a handshake where we say, hey, you know, the supported feature is going to be in mesh exactly as we all agreed on the gap. So then the conformance machinery PR can be merged with this. It's just like a simple API call to read the mesh resource and then parse the supported feature from there, which is the exact function from Gateway Plus. If we're comfortable making this handshake and say both are going to be in by August 27, you know, because August 26 is the deadline, I don't think there's a reason to wait for Flynn's mesh API PR to get it.
Does anybody think that there is stuff that needs to change about the API in the mesh resource doc, the mesh resource gap?
I hope not. I
hope
approve
not.
that. But you know, so every now and then I've been known to take another look at an API and then be like, wait, I approve this?
Really, Rob? I've never noticed that.
So
certainly I've
no
never
promises.
done it myself. So yeah. But yeah, the plan is to go ahead and get the mesh resource API PR up soon. Leora, I'm pretty confident that you can use the API in its GEP and, you know, carry on if that helps you.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah.
Yeah, I don't need, by the way, if it's just copy pasting the API, I'm also happy to give a hand, right? It's not going to be as...
if you happen to get to it before I do, I'm certainly not going to complain.
Yeah. Anyway, I think point made is, I don't think we need to couple Becca's PR before. Like to couple this has like the mesh API needs to be before, and I could possibly ask Becca if he's interested in just taking this API in, and if not, I can do it, and if not, Flynn will just do it, and we're staying with this agreement.
If you do get to it and you find that there are problems with copying and pasting it, then let me know, because that would be disturbing.
Yeah. Well, Shane, I think the simple answer to your question, everything's on track. We're waiting on Nick. I mean, I think Nick personally to just like give a final stamp on the GEP PR, which is moving to standard and ending some language. But other than this, yeah, it's on track.
Fabulous. Configurable retries. Thank you. Appreciate the configurable retries and HTTP route. I don't think we have Nick here to give us or Mike. No, Mike was working on this one. Where are we at?
I have not spent time on it. Help would be appreciated.
Remain.
I would like to get something this week to make sure that we have time to like actually we have stuff. But I would say it's at risk at this point.
Could you provide a quick summary about like what remains in order to? It's like one PR.
Yes, so definitely the PR to actually add the stuffs and such to the standard channel CRDs. And then a validation. Yeah, and then a validation of what conformance tests we have. Are they sufficient? We have 3. I know we have 3 implementations, but we need to make sure we have 3 implementations that are actually passing. and the conformance tests are sufficient.
Yeah.
Just,
I mean, in theory, go ahead, Rob.
just to make sure I'm hearing correctly, we don't currently have conformance tests for this, right?
I can't remember.
Okay.
Yeah, I think where we're, Rob, keep me, tell me what you think, but I think where we're basically at with a lot of this is we really, really want to have conformance tests before we label something as standard in the GEP.
Oh, yeah. I fully agree. This should not go to standard without performance tests.
Yeah.
Because
yeah.
I think what we run into is, okay, we get the I think the scenario we want to avoid is the one where the GEP moves to standard and the conformance tests all go right in before code freeze. And then we say, okay, well, technically during the RCs, we can run the conformance tests, but then we end up with, oh, we have to change a lot because we didn't get any early feedback. So now we're in code freeze, but we're changing a bunch of the stuff.
Yeah.
So we don't want that.
It doesn't help. One of the things I've been thinking about with conformance tests, I can't find any, and writing conformance tests for retries actually sounds kind of complicated to me. Not to be too negative here, or too pessimistic here, but
it is. But I think Slim did a lot of them before timeouts.
I'm sorry, you think what?
I think Slim did a lot of repurposable similar work for timeouts.
I don't think I actually wrote those conformance tests, but
okay.
Yeah, it's I have done it before in other worlds. It's really. I've done it before in other worlds and in other lives, and it's not. I mean, Rob, it's a pain in the butt, but it's not that bad.
No, you're right, and yeah, the point is correct. There are
tedious rather than difficult.
Fairly thorough conformance tests for timeouts, and I can see how you could reuse some of the concepts in there for
vibe coding.
Yeah, there you go.
I mean that's basically my plan.
Yeah, perfect.
Vibe.
You say that like
embrace
it's not...
exponentials.
Yeah.
It's actually, to give a little bit of credit, because I'm not a fan of vibe coding, but to give a little bit of credit, testing is one of the areas that I'm not usually like super irritated with the automated like code generation stuff, for what it's worth. You can't just like let it actually drive itself, but testing tends to be structured enough. So, but anyway, that's besides the point. So, okay, so the status is ultimately we'll call it yellow, right? To be fair. And so what you need is support in order to kind of get this over the finish line. So over the course of the next 2 weeks, anybody else who's interested in configurable retries, if you could please reach out to Mike, reach out on this issue. If you have time to start contributing, maybe particularly to tests, but also just like working with Mike on the combination of tests and the GEP, so we can try to see if we can get that one over the finish line, please do. We would appreciate it. HTTP route rule and HTTP route match. I feel like I messaged on this one earlier, but then I was going to message on this one earlier, but I took it back because I don't feel like I have a good sense of where this one is at. I'm assigned to it, which is inaccurate. I am not doing that. Does anybody? I don't think Guy's on here. Does anybody have a good sense of where this one is at? Where's the last?
I thought this was almost ready to go. What last?
Oh! I know where it's at. Okay, yeah, you're right. So this one is marked as standard. But I think where we left off is we'd like to get some implementations that can test the conformance test. It's marked as standard. It has tests. Ideally, before code freeze, we get some kind of like a litmus test of like an implementation or two that can kind of like check it.
To be clear, is this named routes because Istio definitely supports it already?
Okay. Have you run the tests through its paces at all?
Have I written what? Sorry.
I don't think there are any tests. No, there's nothing really.
Tests.
Oh, really?
I think that's where we ended up at.
Can you open it and show us? Real quick?
Let's see.
I'll open the Istio stuff and. in the meantime.
I think where we ended up was Guy went ahead and dropped in tests, and that's where we're at right now. It's like ideally we don't go all the way up to code freeze with nobody having tried the tests. So
1 second.
I
What's
think
the feature name? What's the feature name, Shane?
The feature name is called
named rule. It's 937. Yeah.
GPC route named rule.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
No,
sorry. No.
Can you get the HTTP one? It's easier for me to check.
Yeah. It's support HTTP route named route rule. Sorry.
Yeah, I think if it's not in the excluded part, so I think tests are passing.
Okay, that'd be great.
Did HT127 already uploaded conformance report to Gateway repo?
Let's take a look. Wait, where would this conformance though would not be for?
Yeah, it wouldn't be for like this merge.
It'd be in main. It'd be in main.
Yeah.
Right.
Are you running conformance tests on main in Istio?
I mean, yeah, Keith ran it actually last time. I mean, but he got pushback from me on the repo to actually tie it with a version. What I can do is I can, after this call, just run the suit locally with the latest version of Istio and 1 point and like gateway main and just report. I think it will 99% work. Oh, by the way, if you open this issue right now that you showed us before, this 3826. So then I think I'm the one requested Guy on this PR to actually run it with Istio, if I remember correctly. And I think he actually pasted the results. So
okay.
Yeah, did you run the test? Yeah, if you see.
Here we go. Okay.
Yeah. So
okay, cool.
Yeah.
So I think that's good. Yeah. So if you don't mind just taking a couple seconds just to dot the I and cross the T here and just say, yep, these tests and put it in a comment in 995, then I think we're good and the status is green.
Yeah. I mean, 99% it's green because I remember pinging Guy to run the tests, but yeah, I'll do it again.
Okay, good. That's great. So, all right. So that is everything for standard, and we only have 7 minutes left. I'm tempted to say for experimental, which is a little bit lower threat, we can follow up async / bring these back up next week. But I do want to give a second if anybody wants to I don't want to go through them line by line necessarily, but does anybody want to raise anything out of the experimental group?
Nothing from here.
Okie dokie. Going once, going twice. Cool. Then I did put down just a couple, like a reminder. No big rush. I know everybody's already doing a lot, but we will basically 150 is going to be we're going to start scoping that in a pretty soon handful of weeks. Flynn, thank you very much for being our release manager for 150. One of the things that we had was
absolutely.
we appreciate it. We've had a lot of so anyway, let me back up. 150, Flynn is going to be our release manager. Thank you very much. Just a reminder to be thinking, bubbling up the ideas about which things you want to propose for scope, which ones you want to submit for scope. Go ahead, Leor.
Are we doing are we doing the same release cycle, same timelines, everything, or we're changing anything?
I don't think so. That's what the second point is. At least not the exact same.
My expectation is that we will do some feedback and we will change some things for 150.
Yeah, that's what this whole section I added about is to talk about today. And I wanted to take a few minutes. We said it in one of the previous meetings, but I want to be extra clear with everybody. We have received quite a bit of feedback that this has been kind of tricky, this cycle and kind of the process that we've created around this. it's been very fast paced and it's been stressful. We want you to keep that feedback coming. For instance, one of the pieces of feedback we had just, was just like, just within ourselves, was that we could use help with somebody doing the release manager thing and not necessarily pin that to maintainers, because maintainers have the responsibility of trying to get the standard GEPs and experimental GEPs over the line and stuff like that. So we very much appreciate the help with that. We also got feedback a couple of meetings ago, and we took notes on it about like just this being very breakneck, I guess is probably the best way to put it. I think that feedback kind of is evident without anybody having to explicitly say it, just because we've struggled to get, it's been a struggle to see anything that's really, any one gap that's really been like, or multiple gaps that have been going out ahead. We've had a lot of struggles with like keeping up with the timelines. But the reason for the timelines, which we need to discuss, we don't need to go into like a retro today, but like we need to be talking about these problems, is the reason we push for the timelines is the idea of releasing 3 times a year is very appealing. I think generally has appeal. And this has mostly been an experiment in, is this one way in which we could get there by trying to do less in a single release so that we could have more releases, so that there's more trains coming through, so you don't have to worry about missing a train so much. That was the metaphor we used. So we don't need to dive into that today with like 3 minutes on the clock, but that was part of the reason why we kind of tried to create more structure around this. But we want the feedback. So Candace is already doing it. Thank you. Please do feel to like just unleash right there all your complaints. We want to hear them. You can even put like angry emojis, whatever you want to do. Please no animated GIFs. We want all the feedback, so please do drop it in there. And then I think the answer is ultimately 150 will not go the same way. We'll have to take some of that feedback and stuff like that and incorporate it into shifts in how we do the next one. So I think that's ultimately it for today. If nobody has anything else they want to say, anything to add on to that, we can just adjourn. All right. Cheers, everyone.
Sounds
Thank
good.
you. Have a great one.
You too.